Hi, welcome everyone to the Sigma Customer Spotlight with Metrikus. I'd like to thank everybody for joining. We're just going to give a couple more moments as people file in here. We'll be getting started. Heads up, I'll repeat this once everybody joins, but this session is going to be recorded and then we will share the recording afterwards. So if you get up, if you miss a section, you want to wind that back and watch it again, you'll get an email afterwards with this recording, as well as in that GoToWebinar chat, there is a section for questions. So anything that comes up as we go, feel free to post questions and we'll be able to address them on the fly. So I'm gonna give it just a second and we'll begin in earnest. All right, seems like the level of attendees is coming to a steady number. So I'd like to welcome everybody again to the Sigma Customer Spotlight with Metrikus. I'm going to get into some of the introductions, but heads up, as we go through this session, any questions you have, feel free to post them in the GoToWebinar questions panel. We'll be able to address them as we go, and this session is going to be recorded, so you'll receive an email afterwards. If you want to watch anything back, if you want to share it within your organization, you'll have that asset going forward. Some high-level introductions. My name is Zach Norton. I am a technical product marketing manager at Sigma. I'll be moderating this session, so answering questions in the chat, helping out with the Q&A, and doing a quick introduction to Sigma. I'm joined here today by Sam Hall. He is the head of technology at Metrikus. He's going to be able to talk through this webinar how he was able to get a 25% improvement in operational efficiency across his organization and really just increase the number of complex ad hoc customer reports he was able to deliver. And that was all with a Sigma and Snowflake modern data stack. I also have Jackie Wang from the Sigma side with us. She's going to handle the Q&A with Sam. And then I think we'll even have time at the end to open that up to a broader conversation with everybody on the line. So as you go, again, feel free to post any questions, anything that you want to go into a little bit more detail on, and we'll be able to answer that either within the chat or within the general Q&A. Now that is the introductions for this session. I'm going to launch a poll in just a moment, find out how familiar everybody on the line is with Sigma, just to get a feel for how long we should spend just giving a quick overview, introduction about what we are, what we're all about, where we came from. And then I'm going to hand it off to Sam. Sam's going to talk through who Metrikus is, why they chose Sigma, what they were looking to achieve on top of Snowflake, and then actually show some of the actual reports that he was able to build for that operational efficiency, the way that he was able to quickly deploy Sigma within his organization without a large team. And we'll also talk through our Snowflake usage templates. So Sam was able to use the prior Sigma usage templates to be able to route out problematic queries. And I'm going to live demo to him our actual new 2.0 workbooks with the Sigma usage templates that everybody on the line here today could rapidly sign up and deploy within their own Sigma instance. Then after that, we'll have Q&A and address any questions from the chat. So I'm going to launch this poll, and that should pop up within the GoToWebinar. Whoops, I think I already closed it a little too quick. But what we'd like to know is, what is everybody's familiarity with Sigma? I don't know if I can run it again. Might have to just go with an assumption that the mixed audience here. So I'll be easier with the polls next time. But for now, we're going to assume that some folks need a high-level introduction. So Sigma is a next-gen analytics tool for the modern data stack. What's that mean? We are pure SaaS. We deploy in a matter of seconds, very easy to connect to tools like Snowflake, Redshift, BigQuery, Postgres, as well as Databricks. So we don't have any on-premise baggage. We're not coming to anything else within this relationship. We're pure cloud, don't have to deploy anything on your desktop. And then in seconds, we differentiate with a spreadsheet-like interface for allowing business users, data teams, BI teams to rapidly interact with that data at cloud scale. So if you have 1 billion rows in a table, we'll deploy right on top of it. In Sam's case, I think it was about 44 million rows that he had to analyze for some of the reports you'll see today. But what we have is that ability to rapidly scale, deploy, and put that data in business users' hands and build pivot tables, different visualizations. Now, for a lot of organizations, we are their one BI tool. But in larger enterprises, we know that there's already usually another enterprise tool like Tableau or Cognos or BobJ. In those cases, we're very complementary. So, hey, you already have your enterprise reports, keep them there. Use Sigma for more ad hoc data exploration, or what we like to call rapid data prototyping for business users, BI teams, and data teams to collaborate. And a little bit about our history. You didn't know, we're brought to you by the same people that brought you Snowflake. So a fellow by the name of Mike Spicer from Sutter Hill Ventures was the original CEO of Snowflake. Now, he had the idea for an analytics company that would actually get Snowflake into business users' hands. Now, clever guy, he wanted a larger total addressable market than just Snowflake's user base. So he actually made sure that Sigma would work with other cloud data warehouses like Databricks, BigQuery, Redshift, and Postgres. But as far as our backing, where we came from, that's Snowflake. So we're going to be around for quite a while, looking for the same kind of repeatable success that Snowflake had with one of the largest IPOs in tech history. So this is a Sigma workbook. It's very flexible. Now, what this does is it stays live on the data in Snowflake. So whatever your cloud data warehouse, I'm sure you've already gone through a whole bunch of security reviews to make sure that you're comfortable having the data in there. That's the end of it. We don't move it out. We are a live tool for executing machine-generated SQL code on that cloud data warehouse. So all that elasticity, all that compute, we'll be able to scale with and keep it secure and governed. Because what we don't want your business users doing is exporting it to Excel for all their dashboards and visualizations. What's the point of going to the cloud if they're just going to put it on their desktop? Instead, use Sigma to be able to provide a familiar spreadsheet interface. They can do all their pivot tables, formulas, and calculations. They can really run at the data, drill anywhere within it, as well as explore and collaborate in real time. So we're eliminating data silos now that we've actually have a single source of truth with that cloud data warehouse. And once you have your data story, a great thing to share it is we can embed. So everything you'll see today is also capable of being embedded via iframe into Salesforce, into other internal company portals, or if there's something that you want to share with your customers that you've built for kind of a drill anywhere experience. That's all a really great use cases for our tool. So I'm getting to the end of my spiel. I got to shout out our 400 plus customers, as well as OGs like Sam that have been with us, maybe in the original 25 customers of ours. But we have major brands like US Foods, also working within a startup space for being the one BI tool on top of Snowflake for them to rapidly deploy without needing a major team to scale. So with that, I'm going to make Sam a presenter, and he's going to share a little bit more about who Metrikus is, how they were so successful deploying Sigma. So let me see here. Sam, I'm going to make you the presenter. You should be able to share your slides in just a second.
Yeah, I got it. Thanks, Zach. Hold on, I got a spinning pinwheel of doom. Give it a moment.
It's to be expected. There we go. Looks good.
Cool. Yeah, so thanks for having me, guys. A bit of background on Metrikus. We originally actually started out way back when in the London Olympics in 2012. It's kind of a live digital asset map to try and help people to see where CCTV cameras and benches and all sorts of assets that they were trying to track across London during the Olympics. And we started out in life to try and sort of make sure that you could keep track of those. But then eventually it was it kind of moved into the IoT space, where we thought, well, what if we can already create this live asset map of the outdoor world, why not start looking in the indoor world and integrate sensors such as temperature sensors or occupancy sensors, all sorts of different kind of IoT possibilities to help people to understand their buildings. We want to be able to help people to get data about their buildings in order to reduce their energy consumption or increase their productivity, but really just to make their buildings work better for them. We know that a lot of buildings are highly inefficient, and so we want to help people to have the information to make the best decisions possible. There we go. We work with a range of different sensor partners, all the way from the giants of the world like Honeywell with Tritium, to smaller startups, to people like Yoohoo and PointGrab and those kind of guys. And basically, we work with them to get data out of their API. We pull that into our data engine, which turns it into a collection of standard telemetry properties that allow you to then access that data in lots and lots of different ways. If anything, it's somewhat of a similar story to what Zach was saying before about Sigma, but we are far more focused on the IoT space and understanding specifically commercial real estate data. We also can give you customizable analytics dashboards, which again more focused on, for example, how is your indoor air quality performing? How can you make sure that you keep your CO2 low so that your productivity remains high? How can you make sure that the temperature is consistent across the office and that you're not getting particular cold spots? Sorry, my computer's being very slow. Some of our kind of key use cases, which will come up in a moment, are around. There we go. As I mentioned, pulling all your data into a data warehouse, which for us is a combination of Postgres and Snowflake, to be able to easily access all of your building and sensor data in one place, so that then if you want to start looking at whether you can cross compare things, so you may want to look at, for example, as occupancy in meeting room goes up, then that will affect how your air quality is. So that might then mean that you want to change your HVAC strategies to ensure that you have the best possible environment for your employees. We enable people to export reports so that you can make sure that stakeholders in the business are aware of what is actually going on. Often we found that FMs are further away from some of the higher levels of the business, and so we're trying to give them the information to be able to actually talk about what they're doing. We can create alerts to be able to do the more sort of reactive work, such as a temperature being too high or too low, or whatever it may be in your particular case, so that you can go and react as quickly as possible. As I mentioned, we have analytics dashboards, but we also have an open API that allows people to be able to integrate the data that we've helped turn into a single source to other places. So, for example, you may want to push to Microsoft Dynamics so that you can automatically start sending engineers to site, or you might want to work with Salesforce to be able to open some kind of ticket. There's limitless kind of possibilities. So we have a well-documented sort of open API to help people to do that. One thing to particularly touch on that we do a lot of, and we'll be talking a bit about with the Sigma reports, is we do a lot of work with occupancy and capacity monitoring, where we help people to understand how much space do you really need. Do you have too much space? Because often you can optimize what space actually you have, or do you need to expand? I know that within our own office, it felt like there was too much space, and then we proved, using our own technology, that the meeting rooms were essentially occupied. I think it was like 80% of the time. And so it was quite clear that we needed to expand our office space. And yeah, we're trying to help people to make those kind of data-driven decisions that you often make about computers or tools. Try to also make those in your space. We have a simple interface, as you can see, to try and just give you a quick view of whether people are in or out of the office, which is getting used more and more for people who are trying to operate in this new sort of hybrid working world. And that brings me on nicely to, we worked quite extensively with some of the Sigma features to expand the data set that we have, that, as I say, it's mainly focused on commercial real estate. And what we wanted to do was to expand that to be able to look at additional use cases that maybe didn't fit inside our product. So one of the first things that we did a couple of years ago was to bring out the Metrikus occupancy index, which is, all this is just a Sigma dashboard that we then embedded within a website to be able to help people to understand what were the general trends across the COVID period, where people were, obviously leaving the office for a fair amount of time and then coming back, and how could we give that over to to people for primarily for the marketing department. But in order for us to create that within engineering, it would have clearly been quite a lot of effort. As it happened, because we had Sigma and we could pull our data through using Snowflake, this took us very little effort. I think it was around 2 weeks of work from one person to be able to put all this data together. So it really accelerated the ability for us to explain and show our data to different people, and hopefully gain an understanding into a wider audience. More recently, we also did a return to work report where, as Zach alluded to, I needed to work with the team to be able to condense down a massive amount of data, and it was actually it was 3.4 billion rows of data that we condensed down to about 44 million initially, and then condensed down further and further and further. You'll probably notice there's only 354 rows in here, but it's because I obviously need to show just our office so that we don't expose any client data or anything like that. But we used the Sigma workbooks to basically combine together all our different data sets and create the insights that we needed to be able to help people to help our departments to understand what were the general trends that we were seeing. How were people actually starting to return to the office? Was the office being used in a different way? One of the things that we discovered was there was a slight shift in when people were coming into the office, and so it was a spread from a spread of people moving into the office from 7 till 10 o'clock rather than the sort of traditional rush hour 8 till 9. Although recently we've again seen it, certainly London, returning back to the traditional sort of rush hour kind of times. And so I believe that we also have now another poll where we're going to ask, from your perspective, what is your preferred work environment?
Let the poll answers come in. But Sam, thanks for sharing that workbook and the dashboard there. I think it's so interesting whenever you have a use case where you start out with 3.4 billion rows and you do all this work, and then you get to the 44 million rows, and then all right, it's a little bit more work, and then the tip of the iceberg is that 35400 or just a little bit of data that actually ends up being relevant for the viz, but you have to crunch so much to get there.
Yeah, I think we have. I actually can't remember off the top of my head, but I think we have something like 15 joins to be able to get the data set up initially, because of the the way the database is set up in the background. And without us being able to sort of simply do that through an interface, it would have been a lot of engineering time and, a lot of yeah, kind of developer work rather than something that almost anyone could do.
All right, we got the poll results here. Fair enough, a lot of people remote only, and I hear you. I'm in my Brooklyn co-op apartment myself right now. Jackie's in the office, that's hybrid. Sam, what about you?
I'm at home. I'm normally hybrid though, so
Yeah,
I was in the office this morning.
and I'm excited. We're opening a New York office in just a couple of weeks, so then I'll be actually able to have the option to go hybrid. But yeah, not a lot of love for in-office full-time anymore.
No.
I'm gonna go to my slides and start sharing again. Let's take presentation from you. And we'll be able to get into more of our Q&A. So just 1 second. But before that, what I do want to show is some of our new performance templates. So for everybody on the line, if you are in a Sigma trial on top of Snowflake, or if you're already a Sigma customer, these are sitting just underneath the templates folder. And there is one for performance monitoring. Like you were saying with Salesforce, it's usually part of everybody's stack in terms of a CRM. We have Salesforce performance analytics. But I'm actually going to pop into the performance monitoring. You'll see when the template loads, it starts out with just some sample data, but I can quickly hit this swap button, and that's going to transpose it onto the account usage schema within Snowflake. So hypothetically, you could spin up Snowflake, Sigma, have this up live and running on the data in 30 minutes if you remember all your passwords correctly. And what's handy is we have the very Excel-like tabular interface running along the bottom. It's all pointing to this more data-driven tab. So let this load where we're actually doing some enrichment, checking to see if there's pruning occurring, the actual individual databases, all the schemas. And there's this nice little handy button right here to check the lineage. So I have a story I like to tell. We were working with somebody just getting started with Snowflake, and they're trying to prove that they wouldn't have to rebuild their cubes. So they put Sigma in the hands of one of their business users and just said, hey, upload your CSVs, go ahead, get to the final pivot table that you want to analyze. And by the end of it, the amount of lookups he had done within the tool looked a lot like this in terms of the actual intricacies of everything that he was doing within Excel. So if you ever sat that guy down in a meeting and said, hey, tell me what you're doing within Excel in English, I don't think you'd ever get there. What's handy is using Sigma to rapidly prototype some of these actual pivot tables and dashboards that folks want to get to, but they don't know SQL. So you can actually have those two user groups actually collaborate for the first time with this interface. Now, Sam, you had you used our older templates, right?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
And you had some success finding some problematic queries?
Yeah, we in the early kind of stages of when we were implementing Snowflake on our side, then we knew that there was some queries that were basically like quite long running, or there were certainly times where there were many queries running that cost us a lot of money, but they were quite hard to find within the kind of Snowflake interface. Certainly back then, I think it's improved a little, but it's still not ideal to sort of filter through and look through everything in your history. So we used Sigma to basically filter and do more of like a lookup of bad queries. We knew that there was one somewhere. It's just that, inevitably it was one of those sort of QA to production challenges where it was just a scale problem. We were running, you can do as much as you want in QA and beta, but you're working at the scale of billions of rows. It can sometimes, you can have some challenges that you didn't quite expect. But yeah, using Sigma, we were able to basically identify the ones that were causing us the challenge, and make sure that we slightly modified what those were to work better in Snowflake. So it was super useful for us from a debug perspective, which I guess is somewhat unusual.
And it's a question I get a lot of times in the field. Because we're a direct query tool, was there any concern that Sigma would actually increase your Snowflake cost, or what have you seen? Because you have a pretty active embedded report there that gets looked at directly on top of Snowflake.
Yeah, I mean, because of the kind of caching element, then, and most of the time, like it's kind of the same query running. It wasn't, it wasn't too expensive. I mean, anyone who's used Snowflake knows that that bill can creep up on you, but it's never been that bad for us. I would say the report usage probably has barely cracked 10%, even when we had quite a lot of embedded functionality. Mainly because we also use it within the product, so it kind of because they're like they're quite like symbiotic. The more we use the product, then the more we end up having to do reports, so they naturally end up being about that kind of level.
No, it's really useful hearing that perspective, because I think there's so much investment to get the data into the cloud, and then it's almost like I'm going to keep it to myself. I can't let this actually get into users' hands. But yeah, that caching element's huge for it's the same query, so we're just going to grab the same results and present that within the browser. So one other thing I want to highlight here, this is just one tab for the performance monitoring, but let's say I saw something that was upsetting me and I want to go into a quick drill. Make sure that I'm still sharing here.
You are. You're back.
Great. So I want to see for these queries, I still have that drill anywhere capability to see, all right, show me this now by the individual users. So if there was somebody that was really hammering an extra large Snowflake warehouse, I could quickly click in and see the individual user, or just understand if I have a handful of different medium warehouses, drilling in and then looking at that by the individual warehouse names. So really, that account usage schema is always the same, so we can deploy quickly on top of it. For best practices, if you have a bunch of Snowflake instances, then there's a little back-end work to do to get it all within the same schema. But as long as the data's all been moved into one Snowflake instance, we can deploy these for all your Snowflake instances. And we even just released a new unioning capability. So if you just need to stack those tables up on top of each other, that's possible within our tool. You can see there's a little union button with the beta here, but that's working live in the tool within our workbooks.
That's cool.
I just do a quick tour here between the auto suspend, caching, scaling, and then we also have another template for just looking at cost monitoring.
So the old version of this, we basically have it pushing to a Slack channel at the end of every month, and then our finance department goes and picks up, the costs at various different warehouses, so that then it can be, placed into cost of goods sold, or operational tools, whatever it needs to be. So it's super useful just from a, again, just like trying to make our operational capabilities as good and quick as possible.
Now, that's a great point, especially that Slack integration, because whoever your users are, embed them for some. There's other people that will log into Sigma, but just to meet them where they're at, you can always schedule exports, add that schedule, and that can point to Slack, Google Sheets. We can throw it into cloud storage, and then even something like I'm on this compute cost summary, but I want to fire off this as an Excel sheet. That could just land in somebody's inbox, and hey, they don't know that they're using Sigma and Snowflake, but they do know that they get their reports on time, and they can finish their final end of month reporting.
We used one of those for a client as well that wanted they wanted their desk occupancy information sent in a CSV at the end of every week, and that's not something, wasn't something that we could do in the platform, but I could basically just run it in Sigma in about 5 minutes. Whereas obviously if I was to create that feature, it's work. It's more than 5 minutes.
It's an easy decision rather than a build versus buy. I already bought it, so let's not build it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the Q&A here. So Jackie, I'll hand it off to you.
All right, perfect. Thanks for handing it off, and you can keep sharing the screen. One thing I do want to mention is that the return to the office, all the metrics that Sam was talking about earlier, and a lot of interesting stats about, returning to the office, can be found in the Metrikus The Future of Now report. And I'll share a link in the chat in a little bit. So you guys can all access it and download it because there's really good information in there. And now for a question for Sam. Sam, you are the head of technology. What are your top 3 concerns evaluating new software?
So I think the number one is always, for me anyway, and like more on the technology side, is like how much time do I save from people? One of the most challenging things I think within any team is hiring good people. So the more you can utilize your good people to use a Bezosism to make the beer taste better, then the better. So I don't want people like building something that isn't actually going to improve our product. For operational tools, make them work as quickly and as well as possible. Secondly, I think it's like time to implement. It kind of goes hand in hand, but the quicker you can start to use a tool, then the more likelihood you have of actually getting user penetration. Often I think that the times where tools fail is where you turn around and you realize that only 5% of the workforce is even aware it exists. Then it's a very easy thing to identify something to get rid of, even if it's super useful for that 5%. So I think that time to adoption, like striking while the iron's hot, is critical. And then finally, it's always going to be cost. It's I don't like having it as the number one concern, but at the end of the day, you got to figure out how you're going to get that ROI, how you're going to actually make sure that if you're investing money in a tool, like how am I going to get it back in some way, shape, or form?
Awesome. Yeah, I do find having the right people on the right tech stacks and with new software is always the best thing because it makes onboarding, implementing super smooth, which is why we're really glad to be working with you. Can you also tell us about what else can you tell us about your cloud data strategy that you haven't told us about yet?
Yeah, so something that similar to, like I say, about trying to use tools that mean that we don't have to learn or do things that aren't our focus. We've moved more and more towards the kind of modern, like managed services. So previously, we were very much like managing all our own databases, managing kind of everything ourselves. It's natural if you don't design something in 2012. That's how everyone did it. Whereas now, you can use tools such as Snowflake or Azure Digital Twin, or all these tools that mean that you can move a lot more quickly on use cases for clients. How can you actually make sure that if someone requests, like the example I used before of what if someone wants a CSV report of some data that you have? Previously, like if you're managing all that yourself, that's a whole like piece of design work. It's a whole thing. Now, if you start to actually move towards, allow people to do the things that they're good at, utilize their teams, it means that you can use your team again to do the thing that is most important to you.
That's awesome. Thank you for answering that. And a reminder to the audience, we do have our Q&A open as well. So you're more than welcome to enter any questions into the chat. And, as we go along with this webinar, we are more than happy, either from Sam or from Zach and myself, to answer any questions you may have about Metrikus or about Sigma. And Sam, follow-up question regarding Sigma. You are an early Sigma customer. You're actually one of our first. And what were you looking for back in 2020 when you joined us, and how has that changed, specifically in terms of use case with Sigma, if you are using any of our new features, and how have you gone about, changing with the use cases with us and adoption?
Yeah, so back in 2020, we we were doing some work with, we have a like a sister company or a company that we work with called Air Rated that basically does certifications to help people understand and work on a report about their air quality. The name kind of gives it away, right? And we wanted to increase the speed at which we could deliver reports, because previously it was taking, I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but it was weeks to get data out and do reports. It was a DevOps user that needed to go log into a database to go and actually, grab this data just to be able to then turn it into a report. So the very original use case was, can we have something that a non-technical user who uses Excel a fair amount log on, get the data they need, and go away and create a report? That was almost like the very first thing. It then very quickly expanded into more operational cases. So can we look at sensor status? Can we look at the occupancy index? There was like a whole myriad of stuff that sort of naturally, once there was that greater access to data that non-developers could understand, it expanded the horizon. And so I think now we've moved from, it was quite an almost product focused case. We've now moved far more to it being an operational tool where we have integrations from things that aren't just our own product. We've also got like QuickBooks and I think we have HubSpot. We've got all sorts of different things in order to create dashboards for the various different departments, so that you can make sure that you stay on top of everything from spend to head count, although hopefully you should be able to remember that part, to whatever it may be, in kind of a quick and easy interface that makes it easier for us to then report up to the board. So yeah, we very quickly, I think, moved from that highly like product focused into case to now it being more around almost your classic BI case. And it's been really useful to be able to just basically do one piece of training that can be applied across a whole range of different cases.
That's awesome. And I speak to a lot of our customers, and it's really interesting to see their initial use case has changed over time and over the years. Like initially, a lot of them are kind of similar to what you say, Sam, is they want to implement Sigma because it allows, operational efficiencies, allows non-SQL, non-engineers to really look into the data and be able to basically do everything they already know within like Excel and just carry that skill over without needing to know how to program or complex equations. And then soon enough, they figured out Sigma is super useful for other cases as well, for more than just analyzing data. They can do so many more features, and we all constantly have more coming out. So it's super interesting and exciting for us. Also, kind of moving along the Q&A, what would you say, how long did it take you to start using Sigma and deploying it and enabling it to your users or to your employees as well?
Yeah, it was not long at all. Fortunately, we could remember our passwords, so we managed to get everything kind of hooked up pretty quickly. And I think we actually got we did a 4-week POC where we managed to go from nothing to having that the aerated case that I mentioned within that POC time. And that wasn't someone working full time for 4 weeks. It was I would estimate maybe 12 to 15 hours of work from memory. It really wasn't a huge amount of work in comparison to certainly the expectation. And considering, we went from weeks of work needing to be done for every report to now it takes 10, 15 minutes. It was unbelievably valuable. So it took no time for us.
That's amazing. Awesome. And do you remember any cost related to the time that it took from before to after switching this to Sigma, in terms of how you mentioned it, before it was from weeks and now you were able to cut it down. Did it save you any money in the long run, or were you able to see any major impacts on the cost side?
Yeah, it's more like increased the number of reports that one employee can do. So previously we could do around, it's basically a report a month. It was quite a low number. And I think anyone could see that if you carry on doing that, you're gonna have a lot of people. So yeah, we now can do, I think I would have to double check with Frankie, but I think it's about something like 10 reports a month. It's not, at least 10x, which is, huge. It means that the productivity of those people not, again, being able to focus on their thing has just gone up immeasurably.
Great, thank you. No, that's awesome. Yeah, this is great, thank you. And we have one final poll question from the audience, for the audience, and let me go ahead and just release that. Yeah, we would like to know, what you would like to see from Sigma next in terms of content. What would you like to know more about us? We're more than happy to share our learnings with you all who are attending today. And of course, this webinar is recorded, so we'll be sending you an email afterwards with the recorded information and any links and information you might need to really learn more about our product. And I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds, maybe up to 1 minute, to answer the poll.
Like a virtual hands-on lab is in the lead here.
And I'm going to close it in a couple of seconds, so get your answers in. All right, here we go. Share results. Awesome. Yeah, it's really nice to see people interested in learning more about our product. I think a big thing for new users or people getting familiar with Sigma is that they're really not sure how the product works. So it's really cool to just learn more at our virtual hands-on lab. We host a lot of those sessions live in real time virtually, and you can get your hands on with using Sigma. And we would love to also just show you how a lot of these work. So we'll be reaching out afterwards and giving you all the content on how to do all that. Awesome.
And I want to do a quick plug here for the return to office survey here from Metrikus. So that's metrikus.io/return to the office. So everybody that answered that they don't want to go back to the office and they prefer hybrid, sign up for this report, and that'll give you a little bit more firepower to come back to your boss and say, hey, not everybody's going back full time.
Thanks, guys. My marketing department will love you.
All right, and some quick plugs for what's coming up. A lot of people said that they wanted to hand a virtual hands-on lab. Next one is coming up on the 27th. I run that with one of our solution engineers. Really takes you through A to Z, connecting to Snowflake, your cloud data warehouse, building on top of the data, getting that drill anywhere, repeating some of the success that Sam has seen within his organization to just start knocking out 10x of their reports for different use cases once the data is in Snowflake. We also run a What's New webinar every month. So a lot of cool new features, little bells and whistles that fun to see where they're in the product, little different use cases. We're always creating new enhancements like that Slack integration, like our union feature, like all those different templates that I just ran through. So those are very fun to watch, or even just go back, check the recording, similar to this one that will be on our website, and everybody will receive a actual recording in an email afterwards if they wanted to review. So that takes us up to about 15 minutes from the hour. Sam, I know it's getting late on your end, so I want to thank you again for joining us and talking through some of your success with our platform. Really glad that we were able to partner so early.
Thanks for having me, and pleasure.
All right, Jackie, you want to take us out?
Yeah, sure. I posted some of the links we talked about on this slide into the chat. Let me see here. Looks like we don't have any questions. This is your last chance to ask. Otherwise, we really enjoyed having all of you here, and thank you so much, Sam, for presenting. I'll give it maybe 1 minute in case we have any questions. But yeah, check out the links I sent over for resources on our case studies. We're also releasing a new or revised case study for one of our other customers, Groundswell, who also been our early customer, and just talking about their use case as well, along with an upcoming hands-on lab on September 27th, and what's new with Sigma, because we always have new things coming out. But with that, thank you everyone for attending. Looks like we don't have anything in the chat box.
I got a quick one. Is there any plan for certification from Sigma? So if you look, actually, quick plug for one of our partners, PH Data. They have a nice little certification that they put together. We'll be taking some cues from them to put one together ourselves for getting folks onboarded and familiar with the tool. Now, you can also just transpose some of what you already know from Excel and rapidly onboard with Sigma. But yeah, once you go through that virtual hands-on lab, that is probably the best next step to get really trained up. And another quick question, is Sigma being used as a standalone tool or complementary to existing tools? Now, Sam, in your organization, do you have any other more traditional reporting tools?
No, we don't. We just use Sigma for like all of them, all of our cases. So.
Now, for some of our larger companies like US Foods, we end up being more complementary just because you already have some traditional reports set up. You have a lot of on-premise data sources. Makes sense for them to use that where it's already successful, then add in Sigma afterwards. I think that's it from the chat.
We also have another question. There's another one from Josh. He asked, are there any additional chart types in beta?
Yep, so what we actually have in the tool is, and I'd reach out to your Sigma solution engineer or customer success manager if you haven't worked with our plugins capabilities. So if you want to have your more custom visualizations to scale out with, or to find out kind of what's next, or make some requests for what you'd like to be a out-of-the-box visualization, those are some paths that you can go down. But there is the plugins for visualizations. We have quite a few in our documentation. Those are easy to deploy for things like spider charts or sand keys, as well as like word clouds. Those are all in there with the plugin capability.
Awesome. You're welcome, Josh. And to everyone else, I think that's it. Great. Well, thank you, all of you. Thank you so much, Sam, for taking time. I know it's late in London over there, and we're getting our morning started in the States. So happy to follow up with all of you, and thank you for attending. Have a great rest of the day or evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.